Mike Walker, Executive Director at Microsoft, focused on life sciences, supply chain, and manufacturing. So it's going to have a dramatic effect on how we think about supply chain broadly. The easy thing that we've all seen in the press is around ChatGPT. That is going to revolutionize the barrier that we've had between our people and our data and systems behind the scenes. Traditionally, it's been very complex. We've had to deal with things like, Excel files and paper even in the process. AI is going to change that interaction in a significant way, make it more conversation, make it more human friendly. So whereas before we had to adapt to the technology, now it's reversed. The technology is adapting to us as human beings. So it's very powerful. But also what we're seeing as far as the momentum in the industry and where things are going is not only this virtual assistant, but also autonomous agents that are able to act on our behalf. And so this is extremely powerful because it allows you to delegate tasks and responsibilities and actions to your artificial intelligence. And so the combination of these aspects are really going to streamline their jobs. It's going to allow us to go into other areas like autonomous things as well, machinery, vehicles, etc. That again is going to continue to add more and more value. So the three critical skill sets that someone should have in supply chain really comes down to a lot of those more data science principles, understanding how data works, why it's important, and knowing that we're moving towards a world in which there's more and more that's self-service, that we're empowering people to essentially develop their own analytics, develop their own reports. And so when we talked about generative AI in the previous question, we talked about this notion of this virtual agent that's there to help you. Well, part of really maximizing the value of that agent is knowing how to talk to that agent. And so there's notions like prompt engineering that help you be more precise in your questions so that you get a better result. And so that is most certainly a critical skill set that folks are going to need to possess to really maximize that opportunity. I mentioned data. Data is critically important because without trustworthy data, the AI isn't going to be trustworthy either, right? And so we don't want that. And, third and foremost, it's going to be looking at, I talked a lot about the digital world, but there's also humans are analog living in a digital world, right? So how do we incorporate the human element into our partnerships and relationships? It's not often spoken about, from a guy like, at Microsoft, but it's critically important. As we move into this new digital world, collaboration is going to be important. So there's been a lot of momentum in the hybrid workforce. What we've learned is that while having a Teams call and talking about something deeply analytical is usually very productive. But if I'm trying to do things that are more innovative in nature, I need to bring people together. How businesses can take a more holistic approach to orchestrating their supply chain. There's several ways, but I think it really, in the words that we're using right now, holistic and orchestrate, those are two very, very important words. Oftentimes, when my customers, they'll say supply chain, they really mean logistics and distribution. They don't mean the entirety of the supply chain, all the way back to sourcing, raw materials as an example. And so it's important that we do understand that everything is connected to everything else in that broader supply chain. And in life sciences specifically, it's critically important because there is a feedback loop between the commercialization function of supply chain and manufacturing and research and development as well. Because you're creating new drugs. You're not there to be experts in building a supply chain and manufacturing for a clinical trial drug. There should be a level of reuse that happens there. But also, one of the challenges in that particular industry is getting that product that you designed and got approved and patented over into that commercialization function. You have to understand that that new product introduction, it can take time, it's complex. And when you start to break down the complexity by taking this holistic approach, now it's less about throwing things over the wall and saying, okay, now let's re-engineer and redo these things. Now it's, much more streamlined. It's now, hey, we're now at this stage of the process and we're reusing as much as possible. And so that orchestration component comes in because each product is different. If I'm dealing with a small molecule or oral solid dose pill, that capability is somewhat straightforward. There's not a whole lot of variables in creating Tylenol, as an example. But if I'm creating a complex biologic drug that takes 2 months to manufacture and requires a cold chain to support that drug, and there's expirations and all that, I need to be able to support these types of capabilities and future capability that I may need with the next scientific breakthrough. And so in life sciences, it's especially important because it's not only just technology, but it's also science. And we're, creating the future. We're inventing new things at a similar pace that we are with technology. So the relationship between Kinaxis and Microsoft is critically important to us, because Microsoft's not a supply chain company. We don't create products for that, for the industry. We're a platform company. And since the founding of the company in 1977, we've always been partner-led. And so for the area that I focus on in life sciences, Kinaxis is the market leader. Very clearly, in the Gartner Magic Quadrant, you're in the top right-hand corner. So you provide a very deep capability from a business perspective in that particular area. And where the best of both worlds come together is we're providing this scalable platform so that you can enable that holistic thinking that we were talking about earlier, that you can orchestrate in a open standards-based way, in a composable way. And so the partnership's really important because when we come together to a customer, they can now understand that this isn't just a niche solution that is disconnected from the rest of the enterprise, but this is something that can be embedded in the DNA of the company in a material way, leveraging Microsoft as a platform and all the capabilities that you inherit from them. And so it makes it really rich, really powerful. And, we bring in also our consulting partners, right? So it's not only just Kinaxis and Microsoft, but it's also, we want to bring in the folks that are going to implement these solutions as well. That's another important element. So we use the term power of three to describe that. And so when we engage with customers, either we're all three going together, or you've got the other two parties or one party primed, ready to go, because going into that conversation, whatever you communicate, you have to be able to deliver. And so we can't do it without you guys.
Perfect.
Good?
Wonderful.
Good. Awesome.